ability to really elevate that issue within the county. And so we are optimistic at the local level that we can do everything that we can and be prepared to go up to the legislature and be a partner with Senator Brooks and others to make sure that at the state and local level we're really addressing the climate crisis as best we can.
A question for Tom. There is a nationwide push to hold fossil fuel companies accountable for their contributions to climate change and for their campaigns to mislead the public. This has been done via lawsuits, shareholder resolutions, and divestment. Do you support these efforts? What do you see as the government's role in holding polluters accountable?
So, I do support the efforts, of course. I have personally divested, and I've actually been involved with trying to get major universities to divest. Really not so much to change the world in terms of what they own, but to make a statement about whether it's okay to continue to participate in this. The idea being we need to make a change, and that we need people who are moral leaders to step up and insist that we make this change. In terms of the lawsuits, gosh, I mean, this is so reminiscent of smoking, where you had people making money selling cigarettes and saying, it's not that we know they don't cause cancer, it's just we're not sure and we need to continue studying this. And that's exactly what they're doing here, is delay, 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 delay. We're not disagreeing, we're just not sure. We need to do more studies, we need to actually bring this on. Do I believe that they have misled the public intentionally? They obviously have misled the public intentionally at the, risking every person in the United States. Whether we win legally, I don't know. Whether they ever pay the price, I don't know. Should they morally? Absolutely. And, would I, if I'm president, would I push those cases? Absolutely. We have, people love to talk about pollution. And pollution is one of those words that I actually don't like, because it seems a little too benign. I like the word poison, because that's actually what it is. If you hear someone's poisoning a kid, you think, okay, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. That has to stop right now. But pollution is kind of like, I'm not exactly sure what that is. I think it's smoke. And so, do I think it's okay for people to poison us knowing they're poisoning us? No. And one of the things, it's not okay in any way, shape, or form. And I think, look, one of the things that I've observed running for president is we use a lot of academic and political jargon that doesn't mean much. And they talk about policies, and pollution's a perfect example. But what we're seeing is really simple. It's people doing horrible things for money. I mean, the president, I just saw last week, wants to stop kids from getting food stamps, from getting SNAP. It's like, are you kidding me? That's not complicated. You are taking food out of hungry kids' mouths. Poisoning people, not okay. Like, you don't have to think about it too much. We gotta start calling things what they are. And that's what's going on here.
I just want to say that on a personal level, I appreciate that your commitment to take on polluters. I have been a lifelong asthma sufferer. My 9-year-old son suffers from severe asthma, particularly in the winter, and it has a human and personal cost. My son's already missed 3 days of school this year as a result of asthma, and so that has a lifelong effect, and we need to make sure that we force polluters to internalize their negative externalities.
Thank you very much, Justin. And our last panelist, last but not least, Cindy Ortega.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you all. It's such a real person audience here. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm a longtime Nevadan. I've lived here more than half of my life, and I've raised my children here. And both of my children are raising their families here. And I've been fortunate is that most of the time I've been here, I worked for MGM Resorts International. And I started there as a management trainee right out of college. And in a number of years, I worked my way up through the ranks and became a senior executive. I had a role as a chief financial officer for 8 of MGM's corporate companies. And then I came into the role of chief sustainability officer for MGM Resorts. And in that role, I was able to build with a wonderful team and a really supporting executive management, a sustainability program and environmental responsibility program. So I thought I'd take just one of my minutes to kind of give you a view into the business mindset when it comes to sustainability and environmental protection. And I'll start that by saying that many leading CEOs are significantly committed to the future of the Earth and this future of our planet. And the way that companies execute those kinds of programs is they do it in kind of 2 ways. So, as Chief Sustainability Officer, I said, so first I'm going to look at how does MGM impact the environment through its own operations. And that's kind of easy because it's kind of like how people do. It's how they use electricity. It's how they manage waste. It isn't just how you recycle, it's how you think about waste. I mean, I don't know if you know, but MGM has figured out a unique way to manage untouched, unserved banquet food and has served 1 million meals into the food kitchens here in the last 2 years. The demand side of the equation, I understand everything you're saying and I agree with what you're saying, and that is that the way that companies look at energy and water use is they say, how can we reduce by being smarter, and so on. So the one way that corporations think about the environment is they think, let's be the best green citizens we can be. The second way is by saying, how can we use the power of communication to spread the message and spread, frankly, our influence to have a positive effect on the environment. And that involves everything from educating customers to educating employees, but most importantly, for leading companies, that involves participating at the fundamental level of policy discussions on both the state and the federal level. And of course, Senator Brooks and I have worked together, and Mr. Magi and I have worked together for years on creating environmental policy in Nevada that is really truly leading in the nation. And Nevada was one of the first states to have a renewable portfolio standard. Nevada's look and its ability to do environmental regulations and legislation is very good. So you say, why did you leave MGM? I mean, that was a pretty cool job. It really was. I mean, it was like the best job in the world. But what I think that we are coming to a fundamental shift in the way that we have to look at the environment. And that is that I believe that the leaders, especially in policymakers, need to move into the adaptation side. And I think that when you think about what's coming in the long term, I think that companies need to prepare for risk management from climate implications. I think that we need to think about how our cities and communities are going to adapt to the implications of climate change and other social implications that are coming. And the reason that's hard for companies is because companies work on a year to year to year to year looking. Like, you care about the earnings and that's it. And so when a chief sustainability officer says, well, we need a 50-year plan. We need to look at our supply chain. We need to know. And so, but that's coming, and I think that the reason I'm here today, because I'm a conservative and I do speak a different voice, what I do see is I believe that the shift that is coming, that a person like Tom, who is a financial, clearly a guy who knows how to take a very large problem and get it done, I think that's what we're looking for right now. And so I formed my own company, Blue Heron Strategies. I live at the wetlands and I jog and see the blue heron every day. And the purpose of that company is to help guide large organizations into looking at climate change on a longer term basis and implementing risk management and climate mitigation strategies over the long term.
Thank you, Cindy. And the question she previously submitted is, I believe, for Tom, I believe your background and experience in the finance market make you uniquely qualified to understand the potential economic implications of implementing aggressive climate legislation. In particular, the idea of a carbon market, which is popular among some groups. In your view, is a carbon market a good tool to reduce carbon emissions?
So, I want to, first of all, say I really appreciate what Cindy said. And I am someone who believes in an innovative, competitive, dynamic private sector. I also thought she said something really smart, which is corporations don't look out 50 years and they really care about money. And that doesn't mean they're bad people, that's what they think their job is. And so when you ask, are they going to come up with the 50-year plan that's going to protect the people of Nevada? The answer is probably not. Can Cindy? Probably. But can the CEO, who's worried about what he's going to say, probably a he, to be fair, or she, in April about the March earnings quarter? Probably not. So in terms of carbon markets, the good news is California has tried everything. You know, in classic California style, we have tried every single thing on climate, so I can tell you how the different things work. And carbon markets help. We've had a cap and trade, which is it's a sort of little convoluted tax on carbon, since 2006. And has it had an impact? Yes. But it hasn't had that big an impact. The things that have really, really worked, and that I think are actually good for the private sector, are setting up rules. Where you go, this is where we're going between now and 2040. Now you invest based on that. We're not going to change it. This is where we have to get. We're the government representing the people. Here's where we're going. Now you figure out how to make money in that context. That's what really works. And I don't think I actually think what Cindy said was right in line with that. Is that you let the private sector do what it knows how to do, but you make the government represent the interests of the people of the United States, which is what it's supposed to do. When it's representing the corporations, this government's broken. When the corporations are writing the rules, they're writing them for themselves. That's what I believe. I believe it's time to take back this government for that reason. And I want to tell one story, just so you'll understand, because what Cindy was saying is true. People working in corporations think they have a job, which is to represent the shareholders and make money for the shareholders, and they believe that when they're doing that, they're, you know the old expression, riding for the brand? You do what you're ordered to do, and you're taking the money, so you do it. You may not agree with it, but you do it. And so I was one of the people who pushed really hard against the Keystone Pipeline. For a whole bunch of reasons, I thought that bringing that pipeline down to the Gulf of Mexico would be disastrous long-term for the world and for the United States of America. So I fought against it really hard, and I live in San Francisco, California. So I thought, I can't be this jerk living in San Francisco, California, and talking about this big oil sands up in Alberta, Canada. I gotta go up to Alberta, Canada and see what it looks like, so I'm not just this guy mouthing off. So I went up there and I was staying with the First Nations people up there. So we're living with the chief of the local tribe, who's like a 45-year-old construction worker. Really nice, had access to like half a lawyer, and his people were being poisoned. It's a cancer cluster. Because the oil sands is basically you mine the sand, compress it, put in a bunch of chemicals, the oil floats to the top, and you put the rest into the water supply.